You have been in suspension for 50 days. In compliance with state and federal regulations, all testing candidates in the Aperture Science Extended Relaxation Center must be revived periodically for a mandatory physical...
Hi, my name is Gabe Newell, and welcome to Portal 2. When we released the original Portal in 2007, it was an experiment to see how gamers would respond to a different kind of gameplay and storytelling experience. Portal went on to win a bunch of awards, sell many copies, and, most importantly, resonate with gamers in a way that no other Valve title has. The challenges for us in building Portal 2 were to live up to people's expectations, to take you back to the world of Chell and Aperture Science, and to surprise gamers again, not with more of the same, but with more of the new. And I think it will be, mostly, a pleasant surprise. To listen to a commentary node, put your crosshair over the floating commentary symbol and press your use key. To stop a commentary node, put your crosshair over the rotating node and press the use key again. Some commentary nodes may take control of the game in order to show something to you. In these cases, simply press your use key again to stop the commentary. Please let me know what you think after you've had a chance to play Portal 2. I can be reached at gaben@valvesoftware.com. I get about 10,000 emails each time we release a game, and while I can't respond to all of them, I do read all of them. Thanks, and have fun.
The idea of being stuck forever in a state of stasis that looked like a crappy old motel room had been in our minds for a long time, but we weren't sure exactly how we wanted to rip you out of it. There was some debate over whether the opening sequence happened inside the player's head or not. There was an alternate opening where Aperture had hooked up all of its cryo-stored test subjects to an incredibly boring hotel room simulator, which Wheatley would then wake the player from. Eventually, this was discarded as too difficult to explain in the short time allotted, and we opted to change the hotel room to a container ride on a rail. This allowed us to show the player, rather than tell them about how they and other test subjects have been stored, show some of the scale of the facility, and even hint at how much time has passed. We also get to gradually reveal all of this through the destruction of the container itself as it moves and bangs into things. Overall, this gives the player a much more dynamic and visceral introduction to Portal 2.
The writers went back and forth over whether or not Wheatley had tried escaping with other test subjects before waking the player up. It was an interesting idea, and you can still hear remnants of this story arc in some of the dialogue. But at the end of the day, it was just too expansive a concept to sell, so it's hinted at, but not overtly mentioned until the end.
Good. This completes the gymnastic portion of your...
Now, I'll be honest, you are probably in no fit state to run this particular type of cognitive gauntlet, but at least you're a good jumper.
The container ride destruction sequence provided some unique technical challenges. The dynamics you experience are actually computed as two separate but nested simulations. The first is a core scale simulation designed as a stress element analysis pass. This pass computes the overall gross motion of the container itself and computes the collisions and breakpoints based on path keyframe data and a network of constraints. As the container bumps and crashes along, the constraints start breaking and the room progressively starts to come apart. There are over 300 rigid bodies and 900 constraints in this rig, all individually configured for properties like tensile, friction, and collision response. The core simulation portrayed gross motion that captured the main dynamics of the ride, but not the fine details. The product of the core simulation was then used to deform spline-based surfaces representing the container geometry, which in turn were parents to fine debris anchored as rigid bodies. As the surface deformations increase, anchors are broken and the fine debris rigid bodies are released into the simulation. The fine simulation also includes the interior furniture and the model detailing. The two simulations were then connected using cache data and were driven together by a series of scripts. Due to the computational complexities of having two nested simulations, we had to come up with some solutions to some interesting mathematical problems. One problem was that the nested nature of the simulations resulted in some instability in the fine debris calculations due to floating point computational limits. The solution employed for this was to compute the fine debris on a stage where the root transform of the core simulation was essentially cancelled out and stored for later use. This allowed us to more accurately detect the fine interactions between the debris and the environment. Post-simulation, the root transform position and inertia were reapplied to the details. We solved the problem of trying to compute the player within this highly dynamic environment by putting them in a virtual room that has all the base shapes of the rendered container, but is simply used to compute player navigation. It's hidden somewhere else in the map. The viewpoint of the player is then parented to the course simulation transform, resulting in the final rendered frame. At the end of the ride, the player is teleported into the actual game space. The simulations were iterative, enabling us to sculpt the dynamics in parallel with gameplay design. In the final product there are over 1,200 rigid bodies, 900 constraints and 1,000 joints. With all the iterations combined, the actual runtime spent computing the simulation was 92.4875 days.
If you feel liquid running down your neck, relax, lie on your back, and apply immediate pressure to your temples. You are simply experiencing a rare reaction in which the material emancipation grill may have emancipated the ear.
This room is meant to teach players the fundamentals of portals, connecting them to two places in the world. As the blue portal moves around the world, the orange stays rooted. In the original portal, this room had these portals moving by themselves on a timer. This led to most people simply staring through their orange portal, waiting for the blue one to end up in the right place. We felt that altering this to make the players decide where the portals came out was more instructive, and meant that players who already knew how to use portals could solve this puzzle both quickly and with authority.
Good. Because of the technical difficulties we are currently experiencing, your test environment is unsupervised. Before re-entering a relaxation vault at the conclusion of testing, please take a moment to write down the results of your test. An Aperture Science Reintegration Associate will revive you for an interview when society has been rebuilt. If the Earth is currently governed by a manner of animal king, sentient cloud, or other governing body that either refuses to or is incapable of listening to reason.
Hey! You made it! There should be a portal device on that podium over there. I can't see it though. Oh! Hello? Can you see the portal gun? Also, are you alive?
We thought of making a whole new character for Portal 2, but we didn't want to lose the relationship between Gladys and Chill that began in Portal 1. Once we decided to stay with Chill, we wanted to improve her look, updating her leg springs and jumpsuit to have a more functional design. At the same time, we didn't want players to not recognize her, so we kept a lot of the iconic elements like the color orange. She has folded down her jumpsuit to show she has essentially rolled up her sleeves and shed some of the Aperture label. She is awake again to test, but stronger and more determined than ever.
Good. If you feel that a lethal military android has not respected your rights as detailed in the laws of robotics, please note it on your self-reporting form. A future Aperture Science Entitlement Associate will initiate the appropriate grievance filing paperwork. This next test is very dangerous. To help you remain tranquil in the face of almost certain death, smooth jazz will be deployed in 3, 2, 1.
This map was one of the first of the older Portal maps that we beat up and decayed to bind the two games together. The smooth jazz joke is probably the oldest one in the game. The team discovered through playtesting that smooth jazz is funny to all ages, genders, and cultures.
Starting out in the ruins of the test chambers from the first Portal was our goal pretty much from day one. We wanted to give players a sense of nostalgia for what they had played, but also make it very clear that things had changed. Not only in a fictional sense, but in a graphical one as well. We needed to bridge the gap between the first game's simpler art assets and the much more complex look of Portal 2.
Welcome.
Much of the fun in Portal is based on the joy of the aha moment when you learn something new. The game needs a very specific pacing to ensure these moments. If things are too easy, then you're robbed of that moment since it feels like you didn't accomplish anything. If it's too hard, then players feel stupid instead of smart when they finally realize that one small part of the puzzle that they were missing. Unfortunately, trying to create that delicate balance leads to a lot of shuffling of levels and a lot of revisions and tweaks to existing levels. When we started the project, making any big structural change in a level, or the order of levels, would lead to hours or even days of busy work, trying to reconnect things and make sure they lined up again. If we ever wanted to ship something the size of Portal, with the finely tuned balance we desired, then we needed a way to be able to make the big changes to the layout of the game, without paying the cost of making everything line up again. We needed a way to bend space. We needed to think with portals. Using portals to connect different areas in the world, we could make any type of impossible space work out. You could look through a hallway into the next room, but the hallway might be on the other side of the map, and the room you were looking into might be in a completely different orientation. We could seamlessly insert an elevator, a huge expansive vista, a room that was bigger on the inside than the outside, or even create an infinite fall by connecting a shaft back into itself. Soon every connection between any space was a portal. We could even switch them on the fly. Even a simple door worked like the cartoons, just a facade painted on a wall that seamlessly opened somewhere else entirely. Once the game settled down, we were able to finalize our path and remove all the world portals. There's only one impossible space left in the whole game. See if you can figure out where it is.